Hi, I'm Khleif. Each and every week, I record an interview with a thought leader that I know you're going to get a ton of value from. Now, here on YouTube are the video versions of my podcast, Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. Now, to make sure you get the latest information, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's get started. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. I know you're going to get tremendous value from the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name's Ira Singer. And Ira owns Mosaic Construction, which is a nationwide GC company that has done tons of work in the multifamily space. In fact, lots of asset classes. And so we're going to dig in. I mean, he's got tons of designations from green, certified green, to aging in place for elderly housing, to remodeling designations, building designations, renovation designations. We're gonna have a lot of fun today digging into the reposition aspect of a multifamily deal, meaning the renovation and improvement to increase rents. Ira, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Rod. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's dig right into it because I really think you could add a tremendous amount of value. So, the name of the game is value add. The name of the game in the multifamily space is find a property, needs some work, add value, increase rents, decrease expenses, improve the net operating income, which will exponentially increase the value. So I know you've done a lot of this. I think what I'd like to do is just get started with having you tell my listeners, what are some of the most common improvements that you see an operator make to improve, to increase rents, really is the bottom line. And some of them obviously are necessary improvements just to increase the overall appeal, but they're all, the bottom line is what everyone's interested in. So what are the most common improvements that you see done?
So the improvements that are driving the market for the end user are going to be the pretty ones, the functional ones. And we can talk specifically about those. We also have to pay attention to the asset as an overall value to make sure that you've got operating savings between heating, cooling, water infiltration, and those part of the business. So let's focus first on the renovation side, because that's what is ultimately attracting your renters. The unit upgrades continue to be probably the singular area of improvement upside, to raise your rent. My assumption in the smart people that are listening to your podcast is that when they own their assets, they are looking at what they need to do from a improving point of view based on what they're paying for it, based how long they're going to be owning it. And so the unit upgrade is typically on the radar screen of somebody owning or buying a real estate multifamily investment, because that's where the people are living, and simple math can get you a multiple so you can figure out what your overall construction work is going to be. Cosmetic changes are easy, fairly inexpensive if they are literally swap outs within the existing unit. It is common practice to have a paint and carpet refresh when there's a move out. That's the opportunity when you would want to be looking into what else can be done for nice finishes, nicer what's there. The trend is in LVT, luxury vinyl tile, to go down in apartments versus carpeting. Hard surface tile, certainly in bathrooms, depending on the market you're serving for the apartment, whether it's stone countertops, whether it's laminate countertops. Laminates come a long way. Laminate looks great in certain applications, but a new sink, a new faucet, light fixtures, a paint job, some new door hardware, those are inexpensive visual upgrades. People walk in and think that they've got a nice place that they're living in. The refresh, the full design build of units, where it's a $25,000 to $35,000 investment into the unit, you're doing significant upgrades. You're putting in, a washer dryer in the unit. You are changing the footprint of the kitchen. You're expanding into family space where it's a big open room. You might have you're certainly going to have data ports as opposed to just outlets where people can plug in and charge their phones and their computers. So there's smart little nuances that will make the unit itself look and feel better, will allow the owner to understand what that means for a rent impact. $20, $60, $100 a month, that's a lot of money in multifamily. It helps pay for the improvements. So those are some of the unit improvements that can be done.
Let's stop there for a minute, if you don't mind. Just to circle back, you covered a lot of stuff real quick. So you know, I know you mentioned door hardware. Now, do you find a lot of operators actually changing out slab doors and putting in like 2 to 4 to 6 panel doors because they look so much nicer? Do you see that happen? Okay, you see that happening as well. Okay, great. Now, when you say door hardware, I'm assuming, well, you didn't say, but do you find that sometimes that even just putting in cabinet hardware can you know, really increase the look in a kitchen? Simple little things like that.
I do. I would say that if you're going to do cabinet hardware, the cabinet market is such a widespread of product availability and cost factor, but you can do a small galley kitchen in a 1-bedroom typical, let's say, you know, 180-foot kitchen with 2 rows of cabinets. You're better off buying new and getting a nicer color and a new knob, obviously, but that's not a big investment. The kitchen looks much better with cabinets and knobs than new knobs on old doors.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And one of the things that I want to mention now, the LVT, that, you know, the tile. I mean, we're finding operators putting it throughout the whole unit, or certainly throughout all the common areas, living room, kitchen, dining room, everywhere but the bedrooms, and sometimes even in the bedrooms. Now, one of the things that I want to mention here, like we've got an asset in, which one is it that we're doing this in? Oh, in Lexington, Kentucky, that we're about to close. You know, the LVT works great on the ground floor, but on some of the upper floors, you have noise issues. So I want to flag that for you guys. If you know, if you're thinking about, you know, converting a 2-story, you know, where you've got garden level, garden type apartments, but they're multiple level. Be very, very careful on the 2nd floor to check the noise factor with the LVT. The other thing I want to ask you about, or mention just before we go any further, guys, actually, we'll circle back to that. I want to talk about the repayment of the costs associated with a reposition and some metrics for that. But let's dig into the larger. You were starting to talk about the larger, you know, $20,000 to $25,000 rehab, and just can you speak to some of the things that well, you kind of did. You put in washer dryers. That's a big deal. You've got to run water lines, sewer lines, take out walls, take out floors. That's a big deal. You know, one of the things that we've done is, like you mentioned, is open up kitchens. You know, you'll see where you can take half of a wall out, and people like that openness. And yeah, we just did that in our asset in Beaver Creek, Ohio, and it just adds such a dimension. Another thing we've done and see is where you kind of open almost like a breezeway kind of a thing, where you've got a waist high wall. Right, it was just a full wall, and we made it only a waist high wall, so you could see into that room as you're walking down that hallway. So that's the sort of larger type renovations that you're alluding to. What are the sorts of things, you know, before we move on into the outside of the units and the you know, the stability of the asset, the construction, the systems, all that stuff. Just want to make sure we've covered all the ground here. We talked about floors, we talked about light fixtures, we talked, you know, plumbing. You see, I'm sure you change out plumbing fixtures a lot. Yes. And you mentioned stone countertops. Another one is quartz. Well, I guess you could call that stone. Okay, it really is stone. It's a textured or it's a manufactured product, but it is stone. Any before we move past this, any other little ninja tricks for improving the desirability of a unit? You mentioned ports. That's a great idea. Is to have those outlets that have the actual HDMI ports in them. Is that what you're referring to? Yes.
Yeah, I mean mostly the USB for regular outlets, because the HDMI.
I meant USB. I can't even spell technology. Right. Okay.
So yes, that is something that we've seen. We have seen dishwashers added into units and under cabinet washer dryers. There is a Miele product that is under cabinet now. Plumbing, floor drain. If you have wood floors as your multi-story building and you've got wood conventional framing construction, I agree with you about the LVT being a noise issue. But if it's a concrete building, and you've got concrete, even lightweight concrete floors, it's shared living. The LVT is more durable. We work in a lot of buildings where pets are living, and pets are better with LVT than they are with carpeting. We've done carpet tiles because that also helps with pets, so you can swap out a carpet tile without having to replace the entire inside of the unit. But you understand what I'm saying as far as making a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a kitchen and a washing machine with all the doors, all the floors, better lighting, better plumbing fixtures, new appliances, cabinets, countertops. You're going to easily get to $25,000, even if you're putting in some lower to mid-level finish grade. That's a lot of work, and that's a permit. That's not like, a guy shows up with a truck and he's in there for a day. The value to the owner about doing the unit work is doing it in a systematized production type of methodology. So we're coming in, the units are typically vacant, and we are coming in to do 3 to 5 at a time. And within 10 days of work, 2 weeks, we're turning it back over, 3 weeks at the max, but that's got to be a fairly substantive moving of plumbing, electric, et cetera, with city inspections that will delay some of the construction. So it doesn't have to be that, but that's a play when you're older stock with the new stock that's coming out of the ground that you're competing against in major markets or mid-major markets where there are phenomenal buildings with amenities and amazing looking units. A current owner has to keep up.
Yeah. And what you just said is really, really critical, guys. When you're doing big rehabs like this, his turnaround you just described, 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks, is very, very impressive. Now, obviously, you're going to turn over units that are vacant. I mean, that just goes without saying. And so, when you're doing your projections and you're doing a reposition like this, it's important to note that your vacancy is going to increase while you're going through this period. We'll like for example, on this 100 unit that we did in Beaver Creek, Ohio, we projected a 15% vacancy for the first year, 2 or a year and a half. I'm just going by memory because we're turning over units, and as people are moving out, we are repositioning them. And what you just spoke to, Ira, is really, with anyone in this business, you've got to be expert at sequencing the work so that you have the right trades come in after each other, and you're not painting after you've put the flooring in, for example, and things of that nature, doing the plumbing work after you've painted. It's a project management component that I can imagine you guys are experts at. So that's the inside of the unit. Now let's talk about, the building, the structure, the systems. What other sorts of things do you get involved with, and what suggestions might you have for, someone looking at a property?
So I started my career almost 30 years ago in the window siding and roofing business, and that was mostly residential work. Through my relationship building, we got into multifamily projects. We were doing window siding and roofing work on community assets, not single buildings with 8 to 12, even though we were doing windows in a building like that, but doing 1,000 windows in a 400 unit community is obviously a different type of project. So the exterior building, the building envelope, the aesthetic appeal, the maintenance of the assets for what you choose as your finishes. Those are all cost sensitive, long-term investment perspective. There are efficiencies in utilities. Obviously, window replacement is probably the least invasive and the most upside for a property owner that owns a masonry building, a frame building, a community building, inside of a large community, window replacements. Today, the quality of the product, even though it's changing still and evolving, where it is today is to where it was 30 years ago. For a vinyl thermal pane window, the performance is significant. So that's an easy one. If you have water issues, you either have roof or masonry or exterior wall or window compromise. And so those are things that need to be addressed. I don't have to tell any of your listeners the danger of having water infiltration coming into the building and what that means to your potential renter that is living in a compromised health mold situation. So the building envelope, we work with masons. We have roofing, flat roofs, shingle roofs. There are decorative accents that you can put. So if you can build out the front of your building with a covered portico, that's a fairly inexpensive, nice facial upgrade. If you're a single building, maybe not so much, but on all your buildings in the community, that's a way to make the entryway better. Clearly, the buzzer and the intercom system technology is way awesome for you just have to use your phones. And, there's a camera function, and there are smart comm systems to get into buildings. You wouldn't hire me as a general contractor to fly out to Kansas City and replace your intercom system.
Right.
But if we're doing a full building remodel, either exterior or interior, we start on the exterior. It's not the sexiest part of the asset, but I will tell you it's the most important part of your investment.
Yeah, no question. And let me speak to why. Guys, if you're going to be turning over units, your tenants need to see that you're making improvements, and you're going and to lease. That's what people see. So if you start on the inside and you wait to do the outside, you're getting the cart before the horse, because everyone sees the exteriors. Now I want to circle back, because you moved very quickly and you had tons of great value here. I want to circle back to a couple of things you said. The smart technology is becoming so incredible as it relates to, keyless entry and your HVAC is turning your air conditioning up and down. And like we're integrating that into our Lexington asset. It's going to, we've got the demographic there is very tech savvy. It's kind of a millennial demographic. And so it just really appeals to that demographic. I love the portico idea. That's an incredible idea. Now I want to circle back to something else you said. You talked about water intrusion. And guys, if you have water intrusion, it should be, the klaxon should be going on, the red light should be spinning. I mean, that should be like your number one priority to deal with, because of the incredible damage that it can cause. And you've got to figure out where it's coming from. I have people ask me, how do I eradicate, and to segue, how do I eradicate mold? Guys, don't even worry about the mold till you figure out why it's there. Okay, solve the intrusion first. Is it a leaking air conditioning line? Is it a roof leak? Is it a window leak? Is it a foundational issue? Is it a drainage issue? Solve the intrusion issue before you worry about eradicating the mold, because otherwise it's just going to come back. Do you agree, Ira?
I do. We were recently called in as an expert witness, kind of an owner's rep. They had hired a contractor. Their windows were put in terribly. They were ordered by the wrong size. I was in a 192 unit asset. 80% had mold on all the windows, brand new vinyl windows, mold inside, because they were so freezing that the windows weren't doing their job, that people were putting blankets over their windows. And in Chicago's 0-degree winter, or Madison, this happened to be, but they were freezing. So you have to solve the water intrusion issue. You have to have a tight building envelope, caulk applications, capping on trim so you're maintenance free, smart water management, which is starting at the gutter downspout, how that drains down to grade away from the foundation, so you don't have any compromise in the foundation of the building where you're getting seepage. And windows and doors and roofs are the most common area that you see inefficiency and compromise.
Yeah, we just closed on an asset in Dallas, 208 doors, and I did a live Facebook live video, and I'm walking around, I'm looking at the downspouts, and all the splash blocks were pointed into and draining into the freaking building. Brick buildings. I'm like, good God. I mean, how stupid I just never underestimate stupidity, but it's one of the guys. If you've got a brick building, any building for that matter, always check the drainage and the water. How the water flows. I forgot how you termed it. I love that term. From the gutters all the way down away from the house. What did you call that? Smart water?
Well, it's water management and the grading of the property.
Yeah, water management. It's so important, and you may not have settlement and cracking issues today, but I promise you don't deal with it. You will. Okay.
I would suggest that it would be attractive to your millennials that the water is harvested in cisterns or rain barrels, and then the responsible owner uses that water to water his property for irrigation and flowering. That's a turn on to a millennial to capture the water, because they're highly sensitized around paperless life and water conservation, and they care about the planet.
Yeah, sure. If that is your demographic, that's certainly something to consider for sure. So we've talked about the envelope, guys. That's the the exterior of the property, siding, brick, masonry, whatever it is, stucco. That's the envelope. We've talked about the windows and the roof. Let's talk about some of the systems. Do you get involved in system upgrades, in chillers and boilers and hot water heaters and on? Yes?
Yes, if that is so when that's going to happen, either design build through my company with me bringing out my HVAC contractor who is an engineer, or the owner is bringing an engineer to the party because there is inefficiency. The system was old. He bought the asset, knew that, and it's on the 3 to 5 year plan, and now you have to get a professional in. Yes, we're going to design build, bring construction along with design to talk about what today's options are, because my trades have all the latest experience. The architect ultimately needs to design it because there's a permit involved. You're changing a whole system within a building, and the municipality is going to be involved, so there has to be an engineering stamp. But the execution of the work and the product suggestion and the methodologies, and not just what the HVAC guy has got to do to make his change. Maybe there's an impact in opening up drywall because you're going from a boiler to a mini split system. You're putting little wall cartridges in each unit, and they all have their own condensing lines that have to get outside and down to the ground. But it's a higher electric cost. It depends on who's paying the electric bill. But if the renter pays the electric bill, they will have more control over heating and cooling by giving them their own system. That's not a bad way to go, depending on if you're a 20-unit building versus a 100-unit building. At that point, your system has to be for the entire building. And, boilers are smart. They are high efficiency. We have certainly changed apartment buildings where all the individual units have mechanical closets, and we're putting in small, little air handler coolers that are ducted either in soffits because the ceiling is finished and they don't want to open it up, or we just soffit down from the ceiling, or we expose it. Today you can have spiral ducts.
Let me ask you something here, and I'm really glad you went there. Let's say you find a building that's got wall air conditioning units hanging out of it, 60s built. You know these ugly freaking buildings that have stuff hanging out the outsides of them. Let's talk about some potential solutions. Like for example, I was looking at a property here in Florida that was 60s built. I'm still considering it because it's close to me, and it's a smaller one. It's only, I think, 30 doors, but I'm considering it. But it's got the low pitched roofs on it, 60s built construction, but it's got window and wall units. What are some solutions there for someone that looks at one of those assets to make it more modern? I don't know if, I'm sure ductwork, like you say, can sometimes be a challenge. What are some possible solutions to rectify one of these old crappy, for at least from the exterior looking buildings, and certainly, those cooling systems don't work nearly as well as the central system. What are some solutions?
Well, so if you're talking about a building that has through-wall sleeves for a living room and a bedroom, and that's the cooling system, and then the heating is electric base or boiler thin tube radiator at the base, although in Florida there's probably not a lot of that, but up by us, of course, there is. I would look at the mini split systems. Those are, you can infill the pass through, that's a match issue. So you do have to take into consideration if you're eliminating the sleeve, you don't want to leave the sleeve there, abandon the unit, and just because the sleeve could be insulated, you leave it, because the sleeve is ugly. So if you're going to put in a mini split that's going to have a condensing line from the unit out on the masonry running down under a hat channel, so it's not the black foam ugly, you have to figure out a way to infill that, but you'll get heat and cool, and or just cool, and you will get rid of that ugly. On the roof line, there are a lot of things that can be done architecturally where you can facade or, build up on the top a gable design that you put a hardy shake panel on the face, so it becomes a gable face and not a gable roof. You build up a triangle essentially, and you sit it on top of the roof, and it's just carpentry work and roofing and siding. But there are absolutely.
So you could go inside of it with your ductwork. Is that what we're saying here? If you've got
no. I'm just saying if you have a flat roof, there's a way to.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. So aesthetically, to take a flat roof to a pitch. Yeah, I was talking more about the hurdles with running the ductwork and that. Yeah, here in Florida, we will have an HVAC unit that's got a heat strip in it, because we don't need to heat that often. But up north, like you say, you'll find buildings, these old buildings that have boiler systems that have individual AC in the walls. But I always thought, if you could come up with an easy, there's no easy. What I'm hearing.
No.
Yeah.
Basically, two options. You have a closet that you can cannibalize to create a mechanical closet, and you put a chiller, an air handler in there. You either expose the ducts running in the ceiling, against the wall ceiling, and they're spiral. You can paint them a pretty color. They can be an accent piece. If the rest of the vibe of the unit fits in with that exposed spiral duct look, if that doesn't work, you could build small soffits and have the duct hidden. But you're not going to want to expose trunk line, square, sheet metal, strapped. Those are ugly. You're not going to want to see that in an apartment. You can vibe it if it's like spiral and it works with the overall feel of an exposed brick wall, old wood floors. If you're like in a downtown district in an old building, looks terrific. That looks terrific.
Yeah, that looks awesome. And millennials love that stuff. Okay, well, super. We can move past this. So what other types of renovation, repositioning haven't we covered yet? I'm just.
So there's fitness, there's pets, there's outdoors, there's packages.
Let's talk about outdoors. Let's talk about outdoors first.
Okay, so outdoors are dog parks.
Dog parks.
Simple to build. Literally an enclosure with some fun playground equipment and a smart floor so the waste doesn't ruin it. Barbecue areas, outdoor kitchens, those are absolutely big time. Fire pits with, a sitting area. If you have the opportunity to have like flex space outside where I can bring my 40th birthday party to my building and rent it, that's income and an enhancement for the renter. So you've got pools, gazebos. If you happen to, have a major property where you're a community, you probably have walking trails. If it's big enough, you might have golf carts that get you around. Those are just amenities for the owner to consider. When you're talking about enhancements that are separate differentiators for you as the asset owner, because you have a dog park, you have a dog washing station, you have a car wash station, you're different. And it doesn't really cost the owner that much to do that.
Love it. Love it. Dog wash station. That's one I had not heard of before. I love it. Car wash station. That if you've got it out of the way, that makes sense as well. We've done all the other things for sure. I love the fire pit idea as well. We've done barbecue areas, dog parks, pools, of course, and gazebos and things of that nature, but the fire pit thing. Now, I wonder what the liability issue would be for that. Have you seen a lot of those go in?
Well, so in Class A high-rise downtown Chicago party decks,
right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's gas. These are gas fire pits. Then you're not talking about wood. Got it. Okay, got it. Yeah, you see those. Those are awesome. Okay.
They're gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned fitness. So, if you've got a clubhouse, or give some examples of how you've seen those implemented. Have you ever actually brought one out of the ground, or do you typically take an existing, like we've got a unit in our Dallas property that's bordering the pool that we're actually going to turn it into a fitness facility. We're going to convert a unit to a fitness facility. That's an option. What other sorts of things have you seen?
We've done it both ways, both out of the ground and refresh, and in some cases add, where it was just the big open leasing center and they didn't have a fitness center. So fitness center is typically floor outlets. So we're coring or, channeling the concrete. We're ultimately putting a rubber floor down typically. Bright colors, wall TVs, the fitness equipment, be it the independent dumbbells, a cable machine, or benches, that's up to the owner. Depends what your footprint is for space. But if it's big enough, then one of the things that, depending on how big your community is, get an independent teacher for yoga, get an independent teacher for core work, and you provide the mats and the BOSU balls, and your team is in there, communing as a fitness class twice a week, and that's a value add.
You bet. Love it. Great idea. You just touched on something I wanted to expand on. Yep, I lost it. Well, no, those great ideas. So what were some of the other ones you touched on? I didn't.
A package room is probably one of the, depending on how big your unit, your building is. If you have 30 or more units in a building, somewhere in the basement or in the lobby, depending on what you're, if you're a center entry with 2 wings on the side, depends on what your flex space is. But if you can, there are build outs we've done where we have put all of the wall, drywall, flooring, electric, and low voltage in, and then third parties come in that are in the package locker business, and they install the lockers. And what it does, it allows for FedEx and UPS and the mail service to come to your building, put a code in the locker. There's an automatic email to the resident. The resident comes down, picks up their package, and with the online world of how people are consuming through Amazon and the like, it's a burden for any staff you have at your multifamily asset for them to have to babysit the packages.
Oh, we just saw that. We were just, and this is a new phenomenon, and that's actually what I'd forgotten. That's the thing I wanted to get up with you. I just didn't even, the name package room didn't come to me. It was just, I was thinking, a place to have deliveries come, and that's really what it is, because, I just got a delivery this morning from Amazon, and when we were in our Lexington asset, I was in the clubhouse. There was a stack of freaking boxes there, right there in the clubhouse.
It's ugly. That's right.
And it's a pain in the butt for the staff, just like you said. So that's a must do. You really got to, that's kind of just one of those things. You better suck it up and realize that that's a must do if you want to, not drive your staff crazy and have, the leasing office look like hell, because like I said, we just saw it. It's funny that you brought that up. Well,
so the student housing community, the market rate apartment community, those are definite bonuses. The senior market, it does not need to be affordable market, doesn't need to be different improvements for different asset classes. And if you have a leasing center that's got a bunch of boxes piling up and you have future residents coming to your place, even rubber coated wire shelving behind the wall that gets built is better than having the packages sit there around your desks.
No, agreed completely. And thank you for that clarification. You're right. If you're in a C- property, they're not buying as much stuff online. Lexington deal I was mentioning is an A property, or will be an A property. So we're definitely seeing that. You're going to see that in those. So thank you for that clarification. Anything else that we haven't touched on here? I mean, you've added incredible value, Ira. I'm super impressed with your knowledge of this business. Anything else that might add value to my listeners?
Well, so the common areas, which are not just the amenity spaces, but the hallways. You know, if you're in a decent sized building and you're an elevator building, you've got hallways. There are elevator lobbies that can be refreshed. There's smarter flooring. You can put a bench at the elevator so someone can sit. A mirror is not a bad idea. The lighting that illuminates your corridors it's a perceived, you know, the light's on and you're happier. If it's dark and dingy, besides the fact that it can create a creep factor for some of your residents, if there are, you know, people in the building who aren't comfortable with darker hallways, it's just fresher, lighter, maintenance-free. Those are just key things. They're simple things. Paint and carpet we're basically talking about. Everyone who's in your business has a paint and carpet guy because of unit turns. Make an investment in the common areas, the door hardware, the door peep, the door entry system. It could be literally electronic, and you're just that much smarter depending on the market and the asset class. But those are all common area items that are going to help you get more for your building.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, guys, his website is Mosaic Construction, MOSAIC .net. And what a wealth of knowledge, Ira. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. I will likely have you back at some point to maybe dig in on some of this stuff a little more, but really appreciate you coming on. And I certainly got an education. I know my listeners did as well. So thank you, my friend.
Rod, you are very welcome. I will close just to let people know that because we're experts in multifamily, if you're taking down a multi-million-dollar asset and you're going to have a multi-million-dollar capital budget over 5 years, we are in the business of helping our clients that we have relationships with come out and see the asset, not ahead of time per se before you take it down and own it, but early on, so you can have an idea as to what is realistic for budgeting large capital improvements, because to do 10 units out of 60 doesn't make a lot of sense if you're owning the building for the next 10 years. If you're trying to flip the building and you want to prove your concept of an increased rent, you can do a few units. We're just there as a consultant to partner as a construction partner with our clients to create value, to understand where there might be compromise. Most asset owners are getting a building inspector to come out, so they have a basic understanding. It's not the same as walking your property with a general contractor with experience in the multifamily sector.
Yeah. No, and let me circle back to something you reminded me of something I wanted to talk about. Guys, if you purchase an asset and you're going to make capital improvements, I can tell you what we look for. We want to see a repayment of the cost of those capital improvements within 3 years. That is our basic underlying metric. So just keep that in mind when you're, deciding if you're going to put, a new appliance package in. Are you going to be able to recapture that money within 2 to 3 years? If not, you better rethink it. The other thing you just mentioned, which I want to draw attention to because you blew over it, was, a lot of times when you're selling an asset, you will improve a handful of units, get those rents up so you can prove to a new owner that there's still meat left on the bone. And that's what you were just talking about. I want to make sure that didn't fly by any of my listeners. So you'll improve a few units, you'll raise the rent, you'll say, hey, this is what's possible, and you've got some meat left on the bone, and it will make your property sell, much, much faster. Wealth of knowledge, brother. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. It's really been enjoyable for me, and I'm sure it has been for my listeners as well. And I will absolutely be working with you and have you look at our next asset, my friend.
Thank you, Rod. Pleasure, and really enjoyed it. We'll talk down the road.
All right. Take care, buddy. See you later. Hey, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you listen to podcasts, join me on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to those podcasts. Just search for Lifetime Cash Flow through Real Estate Investing.
Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws.